What is going on? I want to welcome you from Half Court for today, Wednesday, July 12th, 2023. I am one of your hosts, Sean Murphy, alongside my guy, Troy Sturgin. Troy, good to have you back. What did you do to Jeff? Where did you hide him?
I don't know, man. It looks like electricity hit part of the Detroit area, so I'm the only one here with us. But hey, just like we mentioned earlier, this is retrospect, right? I mean, this is late 2021. This is late 2021. So here we are.
Yeah, man. Yeah, for any OG listeners, but this is this was what the original lineup of the pod was for quite a while. So yeah, man. But that is a-okay. Shout out to our guy Jeff. Hopefully he gets power back at some point in his life. But with that, guys, we have a lot to talk about basketball wise. I mean, the summer league is going on, and with that, there's a ton of different things. Troy, you haven't been able to fully talk about free agency and what's been down there. We haven't talked about it. So we got to dive in a little bit to that as well. I mean, how are we not going to talk about what the Houston Rockets did? I mean, we can't watch Dylan Brooks get $80 million and not bring it up. Right.
Right. Yeah, they certainly seem like one of the most active, but they did some signings that I'm still scratching my head about.
Yeah, one of the teams of the NBA, right?
Yeah, I'm probably sure that you're scratching your head too, but I guess they're in a win now situation, maybe.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. yeah. I mean, they were in a situation where, part of the new CBA is, what are the rules? Is that you have to spend 90% of your salary cap. So there wasn't that before. So, not getting to your salary, there wasn't the salary floor that you had to meet. So for the Rockets, they had to, obviously they had to do that. And the way that they did so was bold. But we'll talk about that a little bit. We got to talk Pistons Summer League first. But first, Troy, this is from Half Court. Each and every week, people can catch us talking all things Detroit basketball, NBA basketball, just basketball as a whole. If you like that, for sure you like this video, subscribe to the channel, hit that mother notification button so you're not missing any of the latest and greatest content coming from the channel. But also, be sure you're following my guys on social media. You can follow Troy at TroySergi44. Jeff, when he's here, you can follow him at Jeff Iafrady when he actually has power and it isn't the 1400s where he's using a typewriter. I don't think those were invented in the 1400s. Troy, let's just talk about basketball. I'm not good at all this other stuff. Follow me at Sean Half Court on both Threads and Twitter. Are you a Threads user, Troy?
Not yet. I'm kind of in the no thread, anti-thread movement right now, but maybe I'll come along to the bright year of 2023 soon.
I'll say this much. It's been nice to go on Thread and not see like a video of someone getting stabbed or like a major car accident or like something just super messed up because, ever since Elon took over Twitter, it's just been terrible. But anyway, let's talk basketball. Troy, Ausar Thompson. Dude can play.
Yeah.
I think there's been a lot of, obviously, if there's one thing that I think there's been a consensus is wanting more from Ausar in Summer League. But to me, it's become very abundantly clear just through the first two games at the very least. It was very important to it seemed very important to them, Troy, to get as many reps for Jalen Duren and James Wiseman as humanly possible. And I think even within those limited opportunities that Ausar has with the ball in his hands, he's making the most of those opportunities, which I think is insanely encouraging. But also, you look at everything he's doing all around the box score. I mean, Troy, this is exactly what I was hoping he would be. Seems like just like the Swiss Army knife type of player that we kind of talked about him potentially being. What have been your thoughts?
Yeah, well, I mean, he just plays winning basketball, right? I mean, he's a guy that you want on your team to compete. He's a guy that is going to give his 110% effort every night. And, just those people who know basketball, right? I mean, there's kind of been that fun debate over the years. Is he a hooper or is he a basketball player? Well, Thompson's
shout out Nick Uncle.
Player. Yeah, right. Ausar Thompson's a basketball player. Ausar Thompson's a guy that can come into the game and really stuff the box score. You mentioned box score. That's something, too, that I don't think we're talking about enough, Sean, is, I mean, the amount of points, rebounds, and assists and blocks and steals, he really does it all. He may not be the best on the team in each category, but he does them all. He does all five well, and he will give you all five of those major basketball stats each and every night. But essentially,
he might be our best defensive player day one.
Right.
Legitimately.
Yeah, but I think the big thing for me is he makes this team better because he makes the right plays on the offensive end, and he makes this team better because he's a locked-in defender. I mean, it's just some things don't need deep explanations, and I think Ausar Thompson's one of them.
Yeah, for sure. It's one of those things where, like he definitely has the potential to be a star, but at the same time, if you're listening to the broadcast, there's this concept, like, and this is just like, this is how you get paid in this league, there's being a superstar and there's being a superstar in your role. Right. And I think, like Ausar is a guy to me where he can be both. At his floor, he's like an Andre Iguodala in Golden State, where, where he can just fill in a lot of the gaps, be a Swiss Army knife, play a lot of really difficult defense, do a lot of the things that, that not a lot of other guys want to do or aren't smart enough to do. And then the fact that he like, obviously, I think, I think Asar's handle isn't quite as good as Amen's. I don't think, his jump shot is quite there yet, and he's not quite the athlete of Amen, so he can't quite blow by guys as much, but he's still pretty damn athletic. His handle's not that bad, and his jump shot is definitely something that can improve. Like like I am not worried in the slightest about the framework of that kid.
And I think in this stage of Troy Weaver's rebuild or restoration, if you will, you want to bring in guys who can fill that gap. I mean, Cade and Ivy are still our 1-2 option on the offensive end, and you want to throw Bojan in there, I guess you can too. But Ausar is a guy that can fill the gaps in other areas too, in the defensive end. He can cut to the rim, and give a Cade or an Ivy a nice assist to the basket. We even saw Ivy have a couple of those assists.
Really quickly, by the way, Amen's awesome too.
Right.
Like in the one game that he played, he was doing it on both. I think in their first summer league games, Amen and Ausar combined for 7 blocks.
Yeah.
That's wild. Like, these are wings / guards.
Right. Yeah. But filling in those gaps, I think, is another good thing that Pistons fans can cling to with Ausar on this team.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, is it the sexy thing? Absolutely not. But like, it's never been Detroit basketball.
But if you want to compete and you want to have this roster compete, you have to be able to compete in all areas of the court, not just 1 or 2 areas.
Well, and he's the type of guy that we've been lacking as far as, that killer instinct on the defensive side of the ball. Like, I think we've seen, not that we haven't had like guys who can bring it on that end. I think Cade, when healthy, is shown he can be that guy, but like, obviously his offensive game is really the juice and the squeeze there for Cade. But, like even Jaden Ivey, by the way, I thought, like, even though like there was the turnovers, like the 10 turnovers in 2 games, I know that was a thing. However, like, he had like 22 points and 10 assists in game 2. And on top of that, he was very improved on ball defensively. Now, he had 7 fouls in game 2. So, you want to cut down on that. You can't have 7 in a regular season game, Troy. But, at the same time, like, I think Ausar will bring a lot on that end. And it's very similar to it's almost similar to the NFL, where a guy like Aaron Donald could come in defensively, cause a lot of havoc, and then it makes his teammates' job easier. I think, Ausar does a very similar thing where he's gonna be able to guard a lot of the toughest assignments, and then the other guys are gonna be able to fill in the blanks. And the athleticism and the length and the versatility that Detroit is starting to build with. I mean, Troy, it feels like the summer league. It feels like some of the pieces are really starting to come together.
Right. And I think our summer league roster is composed of the guys who you want to see those jumps with. You mentioned a guy like Ivy. Yeah. I mean, he's really, to be honest, as far as the offensive end, he hasn't shown me anything he didn't he didn't show me anything the summer league that he didn't show me in the regular season. I mean, he's athletic. He can get to the hole. He can shoot that 3 ball pretty well at somewhat of a consistent rate.
He
So
didn't
I
shoot
think a
well
guy
in the
like
first game, but from the
yeah,
second half of game 1 on,
right,
he's been really good.
yeah,
Really good.
right. But I guess, he's my example. He's my guinea pig there with Ivy. But I still think that this year, too, he can take another leap. And I think Duren can take another leap, too, from what their rookie year was. So really, we know what these guys can do, especially I'm thinking Duren and Ivy. But I think even seeing their ceiling become a little more of a reality in the summer league as far as what they're capable of doing, we're seeing that more. And a guy like Wiseman, I mean, got to remember, this guy's still, 21 years old?
Yep.
So, I mean, sky's the limit still with him too. And I think a lot of NBA fans with kind of this first half of the season in Golden State were very quick to write him off. And honestly, we were too when he was a Warrior. But once he got that better fit in Detroit, and that's the game in this NBA.
Well, people have been very quick to write him off in Detroit too. And I think if anything, Troy, I think Summer League should be a reminder of why they're not giving up on this guy so quickly.
Right. And if he's a part of your team, he can help your team because we're seeing all this growth right in the summer, and hopefully that translates obviously into the fall. But I think of that core right there, Ivy, Duren, and Wiseman. Those are guys that are going to be a part of our future, I think, and we're seeing massive leaps here in the summer.
There are only 2 guys in that summer league that match or exceed Wiseman's physical attributes. Those guys are Chet Holmgren and Victor Wembanyama. And I'm not saying he's Chet Holmgren or Victor Wembanyama, but a couple years ago, it wouldn't have felt ridiculous because this guy was drafted number 2 overall. Right. And yes, he's missed a lot of basketball. And when he has played, there's been a lot of moments that make you go, all right, something's up here. And I will say this much, he is still getting a lot of his work and doing a lot of his thing by getting up the court and calling for the ball at the block. And although you love to see that aggression from a big man, and like if this was like 2007, I think that'd be something we'd be way more excited about. But I think the reality of it is, I think James Wiseman has a very old-fashioned game, and not that there aren't moments where you can post up, not that there aren't moments where that can be effective. But I think ultimately, if James Wiseman's going to succeed, I think it's going to have to be, the best player in the world, Nikola Jokic, plays through the pick and roll. Right. Like Giannis Antetokounmpo. He even does a lot of work with Drew Holiday in the pick and roll. LeBron and Anthony Davis, pick and roll. Right. Like, I think for a guy like Wiseman in particular, obviously it's the continuing to get that jump shot to be more consistent. That's going to make that, more viable. But if he was as aggressive of a screener as he was at calling for the ball at the block, I think his game would be at a different level right now.
Yeah. And not just that, Sean, but not just the pick and roll, but the pick and pop might be something cool to see Wiseman do. Yeah, absolutely. But
the screen setting in general, just set a screen. Like it's,
And to your point earlier, with his freak athleticism and his ability, we've seen now to score in the block and in the post to a degree. You don't get drafted that high in the modern NBA unless there's that much potential, right? And
absolutely,
we're still in the game of potential with James Wiseman. His story is far from finished. I want to remind Pistons fans that.
And would you rather, Troy, have an upside play in James Wiseman where even if he has an awesome season, at most you're probably signing him to the contract that Isaiah Stewart just got, right?
Right. Yeah.
Which by the way, let's talk about that real quick. Isaiah Stewart was, just got extended 4 years, $64 million. And he is the second rookie that has been extended under Tom Gores. Do you know the other, Troy?
Yeah, under Tom Gores, rookie extended. Well, Drummond, I would assume, right?
Yes. Yep.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Since then, Troy, which is crazy to think about because that's in a 12 to 13 year span.
Right. There's only been 2 guys. I think was Jason Max Seal before him.
Yeah, but people, look at that number and go, that's really high. If you look at other guys that signed the mid-level exception, Troy. I mean, Grant Williams is a guy that just signed the mid-level extension. Gabe Vincent is a guy who signed around the mid-level extension. If you look at players who are getting the MLE, Isaiah Stewart is at that level, and if anything, has the potential to get above that level. Like I know we look a lot at salary, but like I would argue, even though Cade Cunningham is our best player, Isaiah Stewart, ever since he's been here, has been our most reliable player. You know what you're getting from him each and every night. And, I said this on the pod last week. There are aspects of his game that he's evolving and growing right now that I never envisioned were possible for him. So I am not the one by any means that's going to bet against that guy or is going to put limits on him. And even then, Troy, this isn't a contract that limits Detroit in the long term in any stretch of the imagination, especially with how much the salary is going to grow in the next couple of years. What were
Yeah.
your thoughts of the deal?
Yeah. No, I mean, I think to me, the biggest thing is this was a statement from Troy Weaver, his belief in Isaiah Stewart and what his goal and vision of Isaiah Stewart is long term. And I feel like if we had Troy Weaver on the pod, he would have said pretty much verbatim what you just said, Sean, about how he is our most reliable player, and how he is a guy who can play both ends of the court. He is making jumps in his game that we saw now in year 3, and now that we hope to see now in year 4, even bigger jumps. So was I surprised? Actually, a little bit. I was, but at the same time, I trust in Troy so much, and I see the ability and potential that Isaiah Stewart has played. And this guy very well could be a very great role player and a very great contributor to our team pushing a playoff run in the next couple of years.
Yeah, for sure.
And the fact
I
that
think
other NBA teams, Sean, other NBA teams were interested in him, that goes a long way in today's era with how deep the league is and how teams view him as a piece to put them over the hump as contenders. That means a lot too.
Yeah, absolutely. I think being able to lock him down before the potential of hitting the restricted free agency market and dealing with whatever potential, poison pill contracts that could have produced. But I think, additionally, giving him a contract that, is tradable, like is something that, like if the Pistons were, to get into any form of transactions, like that is another contract that can be moved. That is another asset that is available to their disposal. And I don't think I don't think Isaiah Stewart playing poorly could. I don't know. I don't see that dwindling. You know what I'm saying? Like I
Right.
think is it a risk? Yes, but if you look if you've listened to Troy Weaver from day one, the thing that he said is we're looking for the right people first, and like we're looking for the right person and who's hopefully the right player. Like they want the right, they want the right players in the locker room, but that starts with the right people. Isaiah Stewart is very quickly becoming the player they want him to be, and he's the person that they want every player in that locker room to be like.
And that's a gospel that the Memphis Grizzlies need to be preached at, right?
I mean, they just got Marcus Smart for that exact reason, right? Like,
Yeah.
like hearts and souls of teams are something that you can't quite put a price tag on. And I know people go, well, and I know I can already see the comments. Well, you could talk about heart and soul and character, but that doesn't get you buckets. And it's like, like people could say that, whatever. But the reality of it is, this guy, expanded his game from beyond the arc in ways that a lot of people didn't foresee possible. He's, he brings it on both sides of the court with a very high level of intensity. Can he finish better inside the paint? Absolutely. Are there areas of his game where he needs to grow? Absolutely. Are there guys that are working harder than him throughout the league? I doubt it. I doubt it. So I'm not going to bet against those guys, Troy. That's just me.
Yeah, and you bring in now a culture with Amani Williams, who seems to be a
Oh,
hire that brings in a winning culture. You get a hungry Cade Cunningham, a guy who's been there for this is now his 3rd year playing alongside of Cade, even though last year I guess you could count wasn't a real season for Cade. The tables are turning, Sean. The wires are moving towards closer and closer to having this roster be one of winning culture when the past few seasons we've only seen bottom of the East. And bottom of the league.
Yeah, for sure. And is it going to be, like this gigantic leap forward? No. And the reality of it is, even if we went and got Cam Johnson or, some form of high profile signing this offseason, we still would not have taken a giant leap forward. But, Troy, I think if you look at the pieces that Detroit's gotten this offseason, as we've seen them play in summer league, I think it's more and more abundantly clear that they want guys that can enable and maximize the pieces that they have in house.
Mhm.
Like guys like Ausar are guys that, can really, allow Cade to be the best version of himself and Ivy to be the best version of himself. I think, guys like Joe Harris and Monte Morris or Monte Morris are guys that can stretch the floor and, like not demand the ball and not affect players' development. I think ultimately, this is something we talked about with Kool-Aid on the pod last week, and I'd love to know your thoughts. It really is just looking like, like not just with summer league with, with seeing what they have with the bigs. It just looks like they're seeing what they have as a whole.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you think across the league, you look at the two teams in the finals this year, Denver and Miami, and both of them very much looked in house to build a championship contender around.
Yeah.
You think of a Jamal Murray and Nikola Jokic. Not saying that Beef Stew has the potential to be Nikola Jokic, but you know what I'm saying. You have guys who can compete and play winning basketball. Look at Miami side; they have guys even like a Max Strus and a Gabe Vincent who were undrafted players, and they're going out and competing. So essentially, and look at even a couple years ago with the Raptors who won the championship in 2019, all in-house players. So kind of this era of signing the massive free agent or 2 or 3 free agents. I guess I'm thinking 2011, 12, 13 Miami Heat. You don't see that as the common, I guess, illustration of how to build a championship team. You see teams building in-house and putting competitive players around them to then compete. So really trying this pattern with this team.
Outside of the 2017 Warriors, and I mean, obviously the Miami Heat, there really hasn't been any teams that have been built and dominant through free agency, especially ever since Adam Silver has taken over. It has been way more structured and encouraged for the league to be, let's build it through the draft, build it the long way, like get talent in house, let them develop, let them get in your system. And like you talk about, like Denver, Miami, those are teams that have been together for a long time, that have had continuity, that that have been able to, like get to this point. Obviously, because of guys, like Jokic and guys like Jamal Murray, but also because of guys like Jeff Green that were important in their locker room over this last year. Guys, like DeAndre Jordan, who was an anchor piece for them on their bench, just as a character guy. Like you need players that help lift that locker room. And I'm not saying Isaiah Stewart is that caliber of player, but when you identify a player that has a massive impact on your locker room, that also is young and has a lot of room to grow himself, that's rare. And again, that's why you heard names of like teams like the Celtics and Warriors reaching out and being interested. I mean, that tells you everything right there.
Yeah, another team I just thought of a couple of years ago, 2021, Milwaukee Bucks. I mean, I don't think some Pistons fans could have had the patience as the Bucks did going into their rebuild and building their team around Giannis.
No.
Another team that did it in-house.
Yeah, they would have wanted Giannis in the G League by like game 3, honestly. But in all seriousness, but back to summer league for a little bit. What have been some other players, whether on the Pistons, maybe even throughout the league? What have been some guys that you've really enjoyed watching in particular? I mean, obviously, The other first round pick that we didn't really talk about as much, Marcus Sasser, when he has played, man, I love the intensity he brings. That jump shot looks beautiful. And I can already tell this guy is going to stress players the hell out.
He fits on this team day one. He fits on this team day one.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah. But to answer your question, I mean, you brought him up earlier, Amen. He's a serious go-getter in this league. I think he's going to have a great long-term NBA career.
The Thompson twins were no con artists.
Yeah,
that was no.
Right.
Yeah.
I didn't mind Grady Dick and how he was able to facilitate and score the basketball. I mean, I think he's a guy that was exactly what I expected him to be, just kind of that go-get bucket kind of guy, and can facilitate the ball very well. So he's another guy. I think he makes that Raptors teams better. I still think Raptors need to make a move if they want to be competitive, but that'll be an interesting fit for him. But obviously the biggest one, Victor Wembanyama, is no joke.
Yep. Everyone that wanted to call him a bust after game one, like everyone that was like trying to take the victory lap. Aha! I told you he was a bust. I'm like, first of all, this is very clearly your first Victor game. This is very clearly your first Victor anything. So you're new here. So I'm gonna, I was just watching and taking notes of all the people that were just saying all the dumb thing. And when that guy came out, which by the way, if you look back and think, oh yeah, a guy who has been nonstop going everywhere for the past 2 months, who had to, who just finished his season in France, is the biggest name in the basketball world, and he just had a run-in with Britney Spears. I think I would struggle game one too, Troy.
I love that play in the second game. I think it was in the first quarter when his teammate shot and missed, and he tipped the ball to himself and just destroyed the rim. He
tipped it and then just ripped it down
right in. Yeah, that was awesome.
You know who was another guy that, I mean, like I just can't rave enough, and I don't want to just keep. If I am a Charlotte Hornets fan, dude, watching Scoot Henderson, I mean, listen, I'm interested. I think a lot of guys in particular, like you brought up Grady Dick, Brandon Miller. I'm curious to see how a lot of these guys look like when they're actually in their systems, because I think like even Victor, for example, a lot of the first game, they literally just gave him the ball and they were just like, go hoop or go make it happen. Like, the Pistons Summer League team is pretty stacked as far as like the talent that they have. Like a lot of their guys are actually going to play on their opening day rosters.
Yeah.
The Hornets might have the worst Summer League roster I've ever seen in my life. And like the amount of pressure that's on Brandon Miller to actually produce offense is crazy. So I think playing alongside LaMelo will alleviate a lot of that pressure. But even with all those excuses and quantifiers, Troy, Scoot Henderson looked, even just in the one game he played, worlds ahead.
Right,
of Brandon Miller.
And going back to
this guy looks like a freaking stud. Like we've been calling and saying on this podcast, don't pass on this guy.
Yeah.
I just, if I'm Mitch Kupchak, man, I'm looking on LinkedIn and Indeed today pretty hard.
Yeah, two things. First, yes, you're right. LaMelo does, I guess, put less pressure on Brandon Miller, but at the same time, with still being the second overall pick, Sean, there's a lot of the offense is still going to try to run through Brandon Miller. I mean, if you look at that Charlotte Hornets roster, it's just not very good. It's
going to be a lot of it's going to be run through him, but it's not going to be the pressure's not going to be on him to set it up. For all intents and purposes, it's gonna kind of be like it's gonna be kind of handed to him on a platter, whereas now he has to go back to the kitchen and bring it out to the people and wash the dishes.
A different role than some. Yeah. The second thing I was going to say is there were so many reports on draft day of how conflicted the Charlotte Hornets were and how committed they were of making the right decision with this. I feel like Scoot's the safe option. I feel like if you're ever conflicted about who the better player is and you're not sure, just still pick Scoot because he's the safer player and has the higher upside. But they did it. They did it.
part of me wonders how much of that was posturing, how
Okay.
much of that was
Sure.
trying to drive up the trade value.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I do genuinely believe that they had a hard time making that decision.
Yeah.
I think they went with what their initial gut all said. And listen, I get from in a vacuum when you have a wing talent that's as good as Brandon Miller, that can shoot as well as Brandon Miller. I understand from a basketball standpoint why you would want to draft that player. But Scoot Henderson has everything and then some that you want in a star player. This is a guy that you look at and it's just like, Troy, immediately what comes to mind? John Morant,
Yeah.
like rookie, like prime Derrick Rose.
Yeah.
Like those are the like even here's another one, Troy. Chris Paul.
Yeah. Yeah. In my opinion, I mean, any other draft where there's no Victor Wembanyama, Scoot is a clear number one overall pick.
Consensus without a doubt.
And how Charlotte didn't see that, they're going to be in below basketball purgatory.
Yeah, they're in
a few
basketball
years.
hell, man. They're
Yeah,
they're
yeah. I was
beyond
going to say below
purgatory. They
purgatory,
are.
certainly hell.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 100%. I think, and again, Brandon Miller had some flashes. He had some moments where he looked decent. But Troy, the rest of that roster, like, dude, they it's not like they don't have a ton of first round, like, guys like James Bouknight, guys, that you think like, man, I actually like there are times where you go, man, Charlotte actually has some players that you kind of, oh no, it's just getting bad, but
Bridges back maybe this year.
I don't know if that's a positive for them. He's back. I think on like a 1 year. He wanted somewhere around 25 million a year, which after having a domestic violence thing is pretty bold. However, to each their own, I guess, right, Troy?
That's right.
But I think looking at the landscape of summer league as well, another guy that I think came in and just reminded people that he very much exists and that he's going to be a problem as well. Troy, there ain't just one freakishly long athletic unicorn. Chet Holmgren's here, dude. And he is not playing around. He's looked awesome in his time in summer league. I think Chet, if I were to bet for rookie of the year for this upcoming season, my bets are on Chet Holmgren or Scoot Henderson.
Not Victor?
Like, I think Victor is going to have a great season, but I think Troy, if you look at what people get to voting for as far as for like rookie of the year, I think Vic is going to be really good. I think Scoot might be more ready day one.
Sure.
And I think Chet might have I think Chet's going to play really well, and he's in a position where they could potentially win a lot of games. Like, I think Oklahoma City could potentially be a playoff team this year. Not a play-in team, Troy. I think they could be a playoff team.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And that's something that is hard to have said maybe a year and a half ago. But I think with how they've constructed their roster, especially with Shea as your number one guy, and really the leap that he took this past year, and all the play that we've seen from Giddey too, and you add Chet to that. I mean, if you're a 10th seed, if you're better than Dallas with that roster, and you add Chet to it, I mean, instantly you're going to be better. So yeah, I don't think a playoff expectation is a stretch. I really don't.
And if they do that, it's very hard to vote against a guy like Chet for rookie of the year. I mean, again, a lot of this is very much early, very reactionary, very much, like just off the cuff.
Sure.
But at the same time, I think, if there's anything that I came away with from Summer League, it felt like from the draft conversations, like obviously before and during the lottery, the conception and the consensus was it's Victor and then everyone else. This guy's just going to come in and run this league. Troy, I don't think that's going to be the case by any means necessary. I think this is still an extremely talented league. And even if Victor comes in and is really dominant, this is still an insanely stacked league. The
One of the best
future is
drafts we've seen in a while. I mean, 2021 was
oh,
good with Cade, obviously, and Scotty and Evan. But this one's also pretty darn good, Sean. Jalen Green.
how about the guy for the Utah Jazz? Is it Keontae George?
Keontae George, yeah, who
Yeah,
had just
Keontae George
absolutely
has been
fallen off.
going
Yeah,
off.
yeah, yeah.
I saw a tweet today that said Utah traded Rudy Gobert and Donovan Mitchell and somehow replaced them both within a year. And I'm like, let's not go that far. But at the same time,
Yeah.
like I don't blame them for feeling that way. And I'm not gonna lie, Troy. If there's any team that I feel like could have found a diamond in the rough, it's the Jazz
Yeah.
with
Yeah.
Danny Ainge and the team they have over there. I just
I wanted
that's
to
another guy. Like,
yeah.
have you watched any Keontae George?
I have. Mainly the game he played, is it yesterday?
Yeah,
Where he
against
dropped
Minnesota.
Yeah, yeah, I watched some of that highlights, and yeah, I mean, he's just a go-getter bucket. But one other player, Sean, that quick I wanna hear your thoughts on is Cam Whitmore. Obviously, he's a guy who fell in the draft, went 20 to Houston, appears to be good.
He's making a
How
lot of general managers look really stupid, Troy.
Yeah, yeah,
He's making a lot of general managers look really stupid.
the
And I
floor is
know,
yours. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I listen. The reports are that the reason why Cam fell the way he did was, I know there was some stuff made about his interviews and stuff like that. It came down to his knee. There was apparently some stuff with the cartilage in his knee that brought up significant questions about the longevity of his career. Now, if he's healthy, I think what we've clearly seen is this guy can get a bucket at any point of the court. He's a stellar athlete. He's coming into a situation in Houston where I question how much of a run he's going to be able to have from day one. If he can kind of help lead that second unit offensively his rookie year, I think that would be a really solid role for him. At the same time, I still think there's a lot of things defensively that are, that are left to be desired. I think where I think I think Cam Whitmore is really developed offensively. I think Asar's developed really well all around. I think Asar's more of a complete defensive player. I think he's a better playmaker. I think they're similar athletically.
Right.
I think, definitely Cam Whitmore is the better, the better, the better scorer and the better shooter right now. But I do, I will be interested to see how that knee evolves because that's gonna, time really is gonna be ultimately what will tell, obviously, right? But off of first impressions, just off of what we've seen, I mean, Houston got a top, an easily a top 10 talent in the draft
At 20.
at 20. Like, you could debate top 5. I personally feel very vindicated about the Thompson twins after watching them both this weekend. I think all the hubbub about overtime elite can be put to bed because I think these guys shown that like they both just like the moment wasn't anything to them.
Right.
Like they just came out to hoop. And I loved even hearing like, like Ausar Thompson, like he was just talking about like, like people were asking him about his touches and stuff. And he's like, yeah, I do feel like I could be a little more aggressive. But at the same time, he also said that, he realizes that summer league, is really about guys getting opportunities and helping guys. He was like, I want to help guys, get their opportunities. I want to help guys get their shots, and like, I think that's been very clear is that Asar has been looking to get other guys involved, which when you have as many players like that, that look to get players involved, that have that sense, there's just a lot to like. And then Troy, my favorite thing I saw from Summer League was this photo right
Oh,
here.
yeah. The logo.
Jerry West with our guy Ausar Thompson. The great Jerry West came out and sought this guy out after his game the other day. And the fact that, there's this conversation happening, that he gets to soak in greatness from the logo himself. I mean, I mean, man, I know, like, we're gonna look at that and take it for granted, but, I mean, to me, that's just cool stuff as a basketball nerd, and then there was the jokes about, Jerry West looking like Professor Oak from Pokemon, starting Asar's journey. "Welcome to the world of NBA basketball." It was really funny. You ever play Pokemon, Troy?
Not a lot, Sean. Not a lot.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me a whole lot. You played Pokemon Go back when that was a thing?
I did have about a week stretch of that. I'll give you that, but
Yeah.
it didn't last longer than 7 days.
Yeah, that sounds about right. That was about how long the Pokemon Go fad really lasted to me as well. Back to summer league, back to the Pistons, back to everything. The biggest, like the James Wiseman, Jalen Duren minutes. I am interested to see what Wiseman's role will be in the beginning of the not rookie season, beginning of this upcoming season, especially with Monty's new system. I think it's pretty safe to say I think Isaiah Stewart is probably going to start day one, and I think Jalen Duren's probably going to start alongside him. I would imagine Wiseman will be one of the first off the bench, but at the same time, I mean, there were moments, Troy. There were flashes where you see why they want to, why they're so interested in Duren and Wiseman playing alongside each other. It's just going to come down to it. Can you get enough spacing when those guys are both on the court?
Yeah.
And can you get enough perimeter defense? Because I mean, you saw Jabari Smith Jr. gave them a lot of problems because of those two bigs and those guys. Neither of them necessarily feeling fully comfortable with guarding on the perimeter just yet.
Right. Yeah. And I think that spacing on the offensive end is probably a bigger, maybe concern of mine, especially where the league is. But I do think that the two of them, if Monty Williams can figure out how to make it work, I would be more than thrilled to see that. But at this time, I'm really content, Sean, with any roster our new coach puts out as far as lineups go.
Yeah.
That's going to be another interesting thing that probably we'll have a lot more conversations about towards the beginning of the season, but even the first couple games.
Oh yeah, we still have the dead parts of August to get through. We'll have a lot of time to debate the
But
semantics of that stuff.
to me, on this one, I'm probably going to take a step back and just say I trust our coaching staff with it. They're not going to put out a lineup that hurts us. I do know that. They might experiment and see that it doesn't, but they're not going to put out a long-term lineup that makes us vulnerable on the defensive or offensive end.
Absolutely. I think, and again, I know we've talked a lot about, like as far as the bigs, that are in Detroit. I know we've talked a lot about Isaiah Stewart. I know we've talked a lot about James Wiseman. Jalen freaking Duren, dude. I mean, first of all, it's just fun to see second year guys, starting to really embrace summer league and understanding that this is a place where they can showcase how they've grown in their game and how they can help rookies along in that process. But also, Jalen Duren has been like exactly what you want to see from a year two guy. You want to see him come in and dominate in the things that he's really good at. But at the same time, Troy, he's showing where he can grow in his game. He's showing where he's putting in the work. I mean, this is a guy that actually has some form of a functional handle. At 19 years old, 6'10", this guy was hitting a freaking crossover step back in the mid range.
Yeah.
Is he going to be are they going to be running these sets in the regular season? Absolutely not. No way in hell. However, the fact he can even do it at all is just bonkers.
Yeah.
And it just makes you really wonder what this ceiling truly is because, dude, I mean, Jalen Duren has been one of the shining stars of summer league. Like he hasn't been going viral on social media, but if you listen to any NBA pundit, Jalen Duren's name comes up.
Yeah, no, and Sean, he's only 19, man.
He's only 19. Oh.
That's what excites me the most is like, I don't even know if we can fully play the game of what's his ceiling or what's his floor because there's still so much more to see from him as far as a growth standpoint. There's so much, even physical maturity, that I feel like is still in store in his arsenal for him to develop.
It's
Uh,
hard it's hard to wonder what his ceiling is when it very much feels like you're still looking at the blueprints.
Right. Yeah.
You know what I'm
Yeah. And I
saying?
and I think throughout summer league, that was something that I had to remind myself of, that maybe not that exact words, but like, this is essentially still a blueprint in this Jalen Duren guy.
Yeah.
And the fact that he played so many minutes last year, I think is going to help him tremendously for this year, that he already feels comfortable in an NBA court, that he's already made massive steps from day freaking one. Remember that
Mhm.
posterized dunk in the first game against the Magic that we were both
Yep.
at? Yeah, he's a guy to be really excited. You want Jalen Duren on your basketball team, and he's on ours.
Yeah, without a doubt, man. And it's just, overall, I think it's just been a really, like the summer league is just super, essential time for teams, just as far as bonding, as far as practice, as far as, like actually, starting to build the foundations of what your team is going to be going into the next season. And in particular, with the new coaching staff, with what, with where this team's going, I think this has just been, it's just especially crucial. But I think if anything, yes, there's aspects in summer league where it shows you, all right, this is where we need to improve. But at the same time, for these just being exhibitions, with the vast majority of the rosters not being who's going to actually be playing, for the Pistons, the fact that our guys were able to come in, showcase how they're growing and evolving their games, but at the same time, show why they were so exciting in the first place. I mean, I think if you're a Pistons fan, I think you saw everything you wanted to see out of your guys in summer league,
Yeah,
at least in my
definitely.
opinion.
Yeah,
Now,
no. I was
yep,
just going to say, the only thing I was going to say was, and something you said earlier, which was, not many NBA teams in the summer league have a good chunk of their October roster playing, but ours was. I mean, really, our whole starting five is going to be playing on opening night.
yeah, yeah, really, just Cade and Stu were the pieces missing
Yeah.
out of that, and like you look at, like Marcus Sasser is definitely a guy that's going to be able to come off the bench and play a lot. Asar Thompson, I could see Asar working his way into the starting
Me
lineup
too.
by the trade deadline. By the
Me
way,
too. For
that's
sure.
something I could very much see happening. Like my questions about where Asar's starting point is at, as far as my concerns, those concerns have been put to bed. So I'm just excited to see. I'm excited to see how they round it out, and like in particular, how Asar looks against NBA level competition. Just because in this step up, he thrived. I just want to see how he does in the next step up, and we have a few months until then, but man, it's going to be a good time. This roster. I also wonder if they're done yet as far as moves to be made, as far
Mhm.
as like are we looking at the final opening day roster? Because I know this time last year it felt like we very much were looking at our final opening day roster,
And
and
then
then
you,
the Bojan Bogdanovic trade happened like in September or the end
yeah,
of
I was
August.
on my honeymoon when I got the Woj bomb.
Yeah, do you think we could be in store for something else, Troy? I mean, let's be honest. Killian Hayes' days in Detroit aren't exactly looking like they're going to be extended.
Yeah, yeah, I see a trade. I do, and if I see a trade, it does involve Killian. Uh, but I'm not sure if I'm, 80 to 90% confident. I'm probably in that 40 or 45 range. But yeah, that reality is certainly there. But I don't think you're trading anything without Killian being a part of that package, in my
Yeah,
opinion.
Killian or Bagley, in my
Right.
opinion,
Yeah.
or
Or
maybe
both.
even both.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That'd be an interesting package. What could you get out of that? I'd be curious.
yeah, I'm not entirely sure. I mean, if I'm Detroit, I'm hoping to get some form of salary filler, or like salary relief or salary flexibility, maybe some very basic draft compensation, or maybe just a guy who can come in like a Matisse Thybulle, where you don't
Yeah.
know what you're getting offensively on a night to night basis, but you can rely on him on a specific thing. Like with a guy like Matisse Thybulle, you can rely on solid defense and in some occasional 3-point shooting, right? Like if you can get someone like that who can come in, fit the role help with that side of the ball. Like, I would still love to see, like us go get a more proven veteran defensive wing that can help alleviate and take some of the pressure off of Ausar Thompson day one. So, and again, those guys are hard to come by. I know that's a hell of a wish because every team in the league wants guys like that. But at the same time, I think Troy Weaver, if there's ever a guy that can find something, it's him. And I'm curious to see, because they essentially got really good players for free, like during free agency, just by like absorbing these salaries.
Yeah.
I'm curious to see if any more of those types of deals become available for Detroit as the season goes on.
Yeah, yeah. And really, at least you guys talked about it, I think, a little bit last week, but my insight with Monte Morris and Joe Harris is these are serviceable players on the offensive end, right? I mean, at Joe Harris, every team needs shooting.
A career 42% three-point shooter.
A top 5 spot up three-point shooter, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Monte Morris is a guy who seems to have played good minutes in NBA rotation with the Nuggets a couple years ago, and even some quality time with Washington this past year. I just think he's another guy too that can really impact this team. Not going to be a number 1 or a number 2 option, of course, but
no,
certainly guys that can contribute and make this team better, and to put even a load off of a Cater and Ivy.
Well, and with respect to guys like Corey Joseph, Rodney Magruder, even at times like Hamidou Diallo, these are guys who can come in that not only bring you veteran leadership and presence, experience in winning cultures and in playoff environments, but on top of that, these are guys who can play.
Right,
like Joe Harris,
upgrades from those guys that you mentioned.
Absolutely. Like, I know people are looking at like, oh, well, Joe Harris, he only averages 8 points a game. You're really only looking for 3 or 4 threes a game from that guy. Like, realistically, put him along. And which, by the way, we talked like about how this team needed some shooting. After free agency, we got Marcus Sasser, Joe Harris. We got Monte Morris. I think Cade Cunningham's going to be a really good shooter. Jaden Ivey is shooting in the high 30s to low 40s, potentially from beyond the arc. Like, I think we have some shooting, Troy. And then that's not even like, we still have Bojan as of right now. He's a guy that could potentially be on the move. Like, if you're talking about potential trade candidates and potentially really getting some value in return, I guess that would be the guy we really forgot about. I even heard Dallas might potentially go after Bojan before the season starts. That's something I heard today. But even again, what assets do they have? Jack Diddley squad. Yeah.
Not a ton.
Yep. So, we'll see.
Anyway, might be their best asset, and even that.
Yeah. Unfortunately for Dallas, they're going to have to be shipping Luka in a couple of years, I think. But that's their future problem. Troy, before we close the pod, we teased it earlier. What the hell's going on in Houston? I mean, listen, I think Fred VanVleet over James Harden was a phenomenal decision. If I'm going to overpay anybody, it's going to be a guy who's actually going to help my locker room. I understand that. But Dylan Brooks, 4 years, $80 million, fully guaranteed. A guy who looked like he was playing himself out of the league as the playoffs went. And then on top of that, I mean, just from top to bottom, I know Fred VanVleet's going to help this locker room. I just still have a ton of questions about this locker room and this team as a whole, man. Even though I understand the Fred VanVleet deal, that is a lot of money for an aging guard, undersized. There's a reason why undrafted guys haven't been paid that much before. It's because you probably shouldn't. You know what I mean?
That's a good way of putting it, Sean. But yeah, I mean, the Fred VanVleet thing, I mean, you want to get a guy who can help you, but the money to me just isn't there what you're willing to pay him. And Dylan,
the money's very much there. It's just what you're not getting what you're paying for. That's what I mean.
But Dylan Brooks, dude, like, what in Memphis possibly did he do to make you deserve he gets that money? Like how did he contribute to that team where he is worth a 4-year, $80 million deal? I have no idea.
Right. If you were to look in a vacuum, like you could say, like he brought some leadership at some parts. You could say, like when he's not causing distractions, he is one of the better wing defenders in the league.
But
But
his
at the
3
same time,
streaky, and I feel like that had to have been a red flag.
when you have as many culture issues as Houston's had over the last couple of years, and you have guys like Jalen Green, like Kevin Porter
Yeah.
Jr., like they have a lot of strong personalities in that locker room.
And how do you fit both of them, Fred VanVleet and Brooks, with a Kevin Porter and a Jalen Green? I don't even know how the 4 of them play together on the court.
It's another thing I could see as well. Like I could see very quickly, even if it's not this year, but within a couple years, who's a guy who really, who's a guy who shoots like he thinks he's Cam Whitmore. Dylan Brooks plays offensively how Cam Whitmore does. The difference is Cam Whitmore's justified to do so.
Sure.
And, I start to wonder, like how many touches is he going to take away from Cam Whitmore? But more importantly, you look at guys like Fred VanVleet coming in, where are the touches going to be for Jalen Green? Where are the touches going to be for Kevin Porter Jr.? Where are the touches going to be for Alperen Sengun?
And they're trying to build around Green.
Are they?
I thought so.
My thing is like when these guys aren't getting the ball as much as they want to, how is Ime Udoka going to keep them bought in on the other end? Which, by the way, everyone's just like locked in for sure. He's going to be incredible for them. Are we sure? Like, he coached 1 year in a Boston Celtics team. That yes, he helped overshift their culture in a year, but at the same time, it's not like their culture was a total catastrophe beforehand. It's not like they didn't have the 18 championships in the building already,
Yeah. It's certainly Houston got a problem. That's for sure.
don't get me wrong. They have some guys who are balling out. We list all those guys. I forgot about Amen Thompson. He's in that group as well. He's in his game. He needs the ball in his hands, and you want him running the offense a lot and playmaking. And with him and Fred VanVleet, I'm curious to see how that works. This locker room is going to continue to be fascinating to me.
Ausar has to be more excited than his brother about what team drafted him.
Yeah, it is. Like Houston, like I know Houston on paper most definitely upgraded this offseason. Troy, what's the statement I keep running home on this podcast?
Pistons are in a better position than the Rockets.
No. Well, I mean, yes, but basketball's not played on paper.
Yeah.
It ain't. People try to look at it as, as black or white, just very like surface level, but it is far like a good basketball team, as we have learned, it's way more complex than that.
Yeah, I mean, if basketball was played on paper, 2014 would have been a great playoff year for the Pistons, but we weren't even close of making it with the Josh Smith and the Greg Monroe and the Drummond. I mean, I guess on paper, those are guys that can play.
Ladies and gentlemen, this has been From Half Court Reach.
No, my point, I'm validating your point, Sean, is that yes, we very much know that basketball is not played on paper.
Right. It was just depressing to be reminded of those days. No, Troy, it's good to see you as always, man. Thanks so much hopping on here. Jeff, get your power back. Get your together. Stop being Amish, you weirdo. No, I'm kidding. If you're Amish, that's fine. Do your thing. As long as you're hitting that subscribe button and smashing that notification. But, ladies and gentlemen, this has been From Half Court. Thank you so much for tuning in. We'll catch you guys next time from Half Court. Be sure you're subscribed.